Hello, this is David Books and Comics. In today's video, Dave's asked me to present the first 50 paperbacks published by Harlequin Books, an iconic Canadian publisher. Now, Harlequin is synonymous with romance, but when they started, they were not a romance publisher. They were a general publisher. They published like mostly mysteries with a healthy dose of westerns, adventure, romance, of course, even a little bit of science fiction, fantasy. So they were a general publisher. Now, the story of Harlequin is fairly well known. It was started by Richard Bonnycastle. Bonnycastle was the head of Advocate Printers, a company based in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And the story goes that he started Harlequin in order to keep the presses going at Advocate Printers. And from this inauspicious start, coupled with some shrewd business decisions like switching entirely to romance, buying out Mills and Boon, a big romance publisher from the UK, making subtle changes to the cover art to make it look more generic, with the authors more interchangeable, expanding into foreign markets with international different translations of their books. All of these combined to make Harlequin one of the biggest publishers in the world, book publishers, and not just of romance, but of any kind of book. So I'm just going to show you the books fairly quickly. The very first book they did was The Manatee by Nancy Bruff. To us today, this is kind of a strange choice as a first book. But when it came out originally as a hardcover, and most of the books I'm going to show you were originally hardcovers. But when this came out, this was actually a bestseller and was highly regarded at the time, virtually forgotten today. Now, the books are fairly uniform. They have the colophon at the top, like the famous colophon with the Harlequin encased in a diamond, the number of the book, same thing on the spine. The back covers are fairly uniform. Usually they have a wavy border on the right-hand side, the colophon at the top with a yellow splash, and a yellow border on the left. So they're pretty uniform at this point. Later on, they would get rid of the yellow splash, and usually they put some kind of illustration here, usually in one color. But at this point, they kept it like this with just the yellow splash. Okay, so that's number one. Harlequin number two is Lost House by Frances Shelley Wees. Now, this probably would have been a better choice for a first book because Frances Shelley Wees, although she was an American author, she actually lived in Canada most of her later life. And she actually had a house built in Canada, and she actually called it Lost House in honor of this book, which was her best-selling book. Now, this story here, this is actually a mystery. You will notice the hypo here, the blurb at the top, dope, danger, and dolls. Like if you're at a train station, you're looking for something to read, and you see this on the shelf, on the rack. Like, who can resist a blurb like dope, danger, and dolls? And the story apparently is set in British Columbia, and it's about an international dope smuggling ring. Okay, so that's number two. Now, the cover art on this is by an artist named Rickard. Rickard was very prolific. He did a lot of covers for many different Canadian paperback imprints. But his first name is a bit of a mystery. There is a Douglas Rickard that appears in the city directories in the 1930s and 40s, but it's not clear if that's this person. Now, beautiful cover. However, this cover here is actually a swipe of this cover here. Let me move this over here. Okay, this is actually a white circle, Canadian white circle. It was published in 1948. The first Harlequin, by the way, was May 1949. And all the books I'm going to show you were from 1949 to 50. But this book here, this is from 1948. Okay, this came out a year before this one. So this is obviously a swipe of this. He's even substituted the hypo for the paintbrush, and you still have the old manner. So it's a direct swipe. This cover is by George M. Ray, who was a Canadian comic book artist. Okay, so, but this one actually is a swipe from this. Okay, so let's set this aside. Harlequin number three is Maelstrom by Howard Hunt. Howard Hunt, not very well known as an author. However, this Howard Hunt is E. Howard Hunt. And E. Howard Hunt was one of the people directly involved in the Watergate break-in. And it's the same E. Howard Hunt. He was actually a writer. And unusually, he was a writer who actually lived the kind of lifestyle he wrote about in his crime novels, and he was actually a very good crime novelist. Cover art is not signed, but once again, this is Rickard. As you can see, the back covers are all fairly uniform in look. Okay. Okay, so number 4 is Double Image by Arthur Herbert Bryant. This is a story about a roadside motel. It's not really a mystery. It does have mystery elements. It does have romance elements, but it's not a romance, not really a mystery either. Cover art, once again, is by Rickard. Now, the next book has an ominous title, very ominous title, Close to My Heart. Now, you're thinking, well, what's so ominous about that? Well, Close to My Heart is the very first romance ever published by Harlequin. And also, it's the very first book ever reprinted by Harlequin, which should have given them an idea that the romances were the books that sold the best. Once again, cover art is by Rickard. Author is Margaret Nichols. Number 6, another first, the very first Western published by Harlequin. This is Wolf of the Maces by Charles H. Snow. Interesting thing about Snow, he was actually blind. He was a blind writer. He would dictate his stories to his daughter. Cover art is by Rickard again. Number 7, The House on Craig Street. This is the first paperback original published by Harlequin. Once again, the artist is Rickard. It's signed right here. Harlequin did 2 printings of that book, and then it was reprinted a year later by another publisher called Export Publishing under their Newsstand Library imprint as Newsstand number 11A. And once again, the cover art is by Rickard. Now, this cover is a painting, but this one is would have been done in gray wash with the color mechanically added afterwards. Okay, number 8 is another book by Francis Shelley Wees, is Honeymoon Mountain. Now, this is a straight romance. Lost House did have some romance elements to it. It does have a little bit of romance, but this is actually a mystery. But this one's a straight romance. Okay, number 9, The Dark Page by Samuel Michael Fuller. Once again, the cover art is by Rickard. You can see his signature down here. Number 10, here's Blood in Your Eye by Manning Long. Kind of an unusual cover. I'm not sure who did the artwork for this. There is another artist, an artist who did some of the later covers that may have done this cover, but I can think of a couple of other artists who may have done this, but as far as I know, they never did work for Harlequin, so I don't want to speculate on who I think that might be. Number 11 is The Wicked Lady Skelton. This is by an artist named Cy Heel. It's actually signed. This was actually made into a movie. It's pretty well known back in the day. It was made into a movie, and it's actually a historical novel, historical adventure about a female highway robber. It looks like a romance, but it's not. It's actually an adventure novel, a historical adventure novel. Number 12, The Killer is Loose Among Us. This is a Rickard cover, once again. Robert Terrell is the author. Okay, let's set these aside. Number 13, His Wife the Doctor by Joseph McCord. This is a cover by Rickard. It's signed here on the clipboard. It's hard to see, but it's there. This is a doctor-nurse romance, but it sort of flips the trope on its ear, because here the woman is the doctor. At the time this was written by a man. At the time this was written, female doctors were very uncommon. Number 14, Six Guns of Sandoval. Charles H. Snow, once again. A lot of the early westerns that Harlequin did were by Charles H. Snow. Now, this cover is not signed, but I believe this is Rickard did it. Number 15 is Virgin with Butterflies by Tom Powers. Now, the cover art here is signed JP. His initials JP appear on here. I have no idea who that is, though. Kind of a really nice cover, very unusual, though. Kind of a humorous novel. Now, a few years back, Harlequin did exact reprints, I think about half a dozen or so books. And this is one of the books they chose. I don't know why they chose this one, but the reproduction, the cover of reproduction is pretty awful. Like it was blurry, the colors were too dark, it wasn't very well done. Okay, anyways, number 16, No Nice Girl by Perry Lindsay. Perry Lindsay, pseudonym of Peggy Gaddis. Peggy Gaddis was very prolific. She wrote mostly romances, but for some reason her books were usually packaged as sleaze novels in the US when they were done. I'm not sure why. This cover is done by the same artist who did this one, JP. I don't know who JP is, though. Number 17, mystery novel, The DA's Daughter by Herman Pedersen. The cover is by Cy Heel. Beautiful cover. Number 18, Rebel of Roan Valley, once again by Charles H. Snow. And once again, a Rickard cover. You can see his signature here. Number 19, sort of a sleaze romance novel, Gina by George Albert Glay. This was published several times. They did at least 4 printings of this book. Once again, this is Rickard. It's signed right here. Number 20, Flame Vine by Helen Topping Miller. This is a romance, of course, and I believe it's Cy Heel did the cover, although it's not signed. Number 21, Renegade Ranger. Once again, Charles H. Snow, and once again, it's a Rickard cover. Number 22, another novel that takes place in a hospital, only this is not a romance. This is a murder mystery, Crazy to Kill by Anne Cardwell. Anne Cardwell, Canadian writer, pseudonym of Jean Makins Powley. I believe the cover art is by Rickard. Now, this book is fairly scarce. Like most of the Harlequins in this period are fairly scarce. But this was previously done in Canada as a digest, and the digest is much scarcer than this. It's pretty rare. And this is the digest here. This is Crazy to Kill, same book. But this was done in 1946 or 47. It's not actually dated. And this was done for the British market. So this is really scarce. Okay, so that's number 22. This is number 23. City for Conquest. Once again, the artist is Rickard. Abe and Candell. They did another printing of this later on with a different cover. Number 24, Painted Post Outlaws. Another Western by Tom Gunn. Finally, a Western that's not by Charles H. Snow. But once again, the cover is by Rickard. Tom Gunn is a pseudonym of Syl McDowell, I think. Sylvester McDowell, I think is his real name. 25, Merle de Mace, Blondes Don't Cry. Merle de Mace, pseudonym of Madeline McCoy. Now, a lot of these books were originally published for publishers who used to do books for lending libraries. So they were cheaply produced. Authors mainly were not very well known. Now, this book here, this is fairly scarce. This is one of the scarcer ones I'm going to show you. Of the 50 I'm going to show you, this is definitely one of the scarcer ones. Beautiful cover by Rickard, of course. Gambling on Love by Gail Jordan. Gail Jordan, I showed a book earlier by Perry Lindsay. Gail Jordan, once again, is Peggy Gaddis, same person. This one's obviously a romance as well. Like her books, as I said, were not always packaged as romances. They were all sometimes packaged as sleaze novels, which they actually weren't. This is a straight romance. Cover art, I believe, is Rickard. It's not signed, though. Number 27, Kiss Your Elbow by Alan Handley. Murder in Grease Paint. So you can tell this is not a romance. It looks sort of like a romance from the cover, but it's not. Beautiful cover. I believe it's Cy Heel who did the cover art, but I'm not positive. This is not signed. Okay, so let's set these aside. Okay, number 28, One Year with Grace by Martin Mooney. This is a crime novel. Cover art by Rickard, once again. Number 29, Gunfighter Breed by Nelson C. Nye. It's nice to see westerns that aren't just by Charles H. Snow. Cover art, once again, by Rickard. Okay, number 30, Portrait of Love. This is by Margaret Nichols, once again. Cover art by Cy Heel. A lot of publishers did this, where you got like a picture frame border they put around. A lot of publishers did this, especially Avon. Avon did quite a few books like this in the US. Number 31, The Golden Feather by Theta Kenyon. Once again, this is Rickard. You see there's initials down here, DR. That's a historical novel, obviously. Number 32, Hollywood Mystery by Ben Hecht. Ben Hecht, a fairly well-known author. He wrote a lot of movie screenplays, is what he's fairly well known for. Now, this is actually, it is a mystery, but it's actually a humorous mystery, as you can tell from the cover. Number 33, Candle in the Morning by Helen Topping Miller. Cy Heel did the cover art, signed here. Number 34, Mobtown Clipper by S.S. Rabel. That's a historical novel, obviously. Historical adventure. Cover art is by Rickard. Number 35, Lush Valley by Patricia Campbell. Once again, cover art by Rickard. Number 36, Murder Over Broadway, mystery obviously, by Fred Molina. Cover art by Rickard. Nice leg art cover by Rickard. Number 37, an adventure novel, Amaru by R.D. Frisbee. I believe that's Robert Dean Frisbee. An adventure novel, of course. 38, Sheriff of Yuvisa. He's back. Charles H. Snow, once again. 39, Be Still, My Love. A romance, right? No, that's a murder mystery, obviously. Number 41, Panther's Moon by Victor Canning. Victor Canning, very popular writer back in his day, wrote a lot of what was then called thrillers. Cover art is by Rickard. Now, Canning, I believe Hitchcock's last movie, he did a movie called Family Plot. The movie wasn't that great, but it's actually based on a book by Victor Canning called The Rainbird Pattern. So he was a very popular author back in the day. 42, House in Harlem by M. Scott Michel. Beautiful art, cover art. That's Norman Max Ralph did the cover art. You can see his initial here, R. 43, The Cleanup by Joe Barry. Joe Barry is a pseudonym of Joe Barry Lake. He had a series character called Rush Henry. I believe this is it is a Rush Henry novel. This guy was one of the more hard-boiled of the hard-boiled writers. And here's a book I missed at number 40. I skipped number 40. It's Passkey to Murder by Blair Reed. Cover art's not signed, but I believe this is also Norman Max Ralph, the same artist who did this one. Okay, so let's set these aside. Number 44, The Soul Blue Marble by Dorothy B. Hughes. The cover art, I believe, is Norman Max Ralph. Norman Max Ralph had this really odd style where he would use almost this pointillism technique, almost like a stippling, but with paint on his cover. So his covers are very distinctive. He used these very light cover colors usually. Number 45, famous book at the time, Night in the City. Gerald Kirsch is the author. Norman Max Ralph, once again, you see the really bright colors he used, almost at odds with the subject matter of the book. This is a crime novel made into a famous movie. Next up, number 46, Fair Stranger, Cecile Gilmore. Cy Heel did the cover art. A romance, of course. Number 47, Registered Nurse by Carl Sturdy. Cy Heel did the cover art. This is for some reason this is a very scarce book, much scarcer than most of the ones I've shown. Surprisingly hard to find. Number 48, Pouldrade Street by Garnett Weston. Once again, this is Norman Max Ralph doing the cover. You can see his signature down here. Another book, number 49, by John Evans. This book here is also pretty scarce. Like these two of the books that I've shown, these are probably the two that are the scarcest ones. John Evans is a pseudonym of Howard Brown. Howard Brown, prolific writer, wrote a lot of mystery stories, even science fiction, although he hated writing science fiction, but he actually wrote quite a few. If You Have Tears, I believe, is the original title. Tough book to find. And finally, number 50, One Way Street by, once again, Joseph McCord. This is sort of a book about manners, a little bit of romance, the loves and intrigues of a department store. Oh, sorry, sort of tells it all. Beautiful cover art. Once again, Norman Max Ralph. I don't think this is signed, but this is obviously Norman Max Ralph. So there you go. The first 50 Harlequin paperbacks. They're pretty scarce. The print run of these books would have been in the mid 20,000 range, 20 to 25,000 copy range. So that's pretty small, say, compared to some of the US publishers, even some of the British publishers. They're not rare by any means. None of them are rare, the ones that I've shown. But there's a few that are a little bit scarcer than others, like these two. Weep Not, Fair Lady, Registered Nurse, and of course, Blondes Don't Cry. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, subscribe. If you'd like to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments. And thanks very much for watching. See you next time.